maybe you've watched apocalyptic movies, and that word means revealed, okay, or a revealing. So when these movies that you watch talk about the end of the world, they're trying to reveal a possible scenario of what they think it could look like. But Jesus is the one who's giving us, he's really revealing what it's going to look like. He's unmasking the future of the world. And he wants us to watch for these things to happen, but he also wants us to not be deceived. Because there's been a lot of earthquakes and a lot of wars and a lot of false messiahs since the time of Jesus till now. And he says, don't be deceived. And if people say, hey, the Christ is over here, the Christ is out there, he says, don't be deceived. When I come back, you will know it and be ready. And he actually talks about suffering, you guys. Suffering is to be expected, but he wants us to focus on faithfulness. And so that's that bottom word there, focus on faithfulness. When I hit print today, I did it wrong. And so as you open it up, it's going to be upside down, but you guys are really smart. You're going to be fine. So then he says, you know, these wonderful stones. Look at these wonderful stones. And so I've got a picture on your handout there of actually the old walls of Jerusalem. You know, they are still there in rubble to this day. And Josephus talked about how big some of these stones are. But these stones, in AD 70, Rome attacked. And Rome did destroy the temple and the whole city. And so the disciples want to know, Jesus, when will these things be? All right, when is this going to happen? And then that's when Jesus, he says, you know, hey, don't be deceived by false messiahs and wars and natural disasters and persecutions. These are the beginning of birth pains, but it's not the end. So we have a few people in here who are moms, and they know what those birth pains are. And they can last a short time or a long time. You can be in labor for a very, very long time. But then the baby comes and you kind of forget about the birth pains. And so all of these things Jesus talked about, these are birth pains that are going to be happening until Jesus returns. And actually, one of them is persecutions. Now, we have it really good in the U.S., okay? But not everybody has it really, really good. And so this is a story that came into my email just the other day. Muslim woman kills Christian couple by poisoning food after taking her daughter to church. And then the subtitle says, woman confesses to accidentally killing her daughter, who also ate food prepared for Christian neighbors during Ramadan. So I've got the whole story here. And what happens is basically this Christian couple, they've been talking to this daughter, this 18-year-old, about Jesus. And they invited her to church. And this Muslim background daughter comes to church with the Christian couple. The mom finds out where she has been, and so it's the month of Ramadan, and sometimes they will prepare and share food with your neighbors. And so when the daughter comes home, the mother says, hey, I prepared this food. Why don't you go take it over to the family that you were with today? And so the daughter, unsuspectingly, just takes it over, and the Christian couple is like, eat with us. Thank you so much. And so the Christian couple and the daughter eat together, and not knowing that the food has been poisoned, and then all three of them end up dying, and the mother ends up confessing. Here's what she said. The mother said, I never intended to kill my daughter, but my plan was to kill the neighbors because of taking my daughter to church during this holy month of Ramadan. And then she said, our imam, that's like their teacher, had assured us that when you kill an infidel, Allah rewards one with paradise, and so I wanted to get paradise. So she killed her own daughter trying to kill these Christians. So persecution happens. Oh, and this was, I didn't tell you where. Let's see here. Go back to the beginning. This was in Nairobi, Kenya, where this happened. So persecutions are part of the birth pains that we experience, and we, again, have it pretty easy here in the U.S., but other countries, there are believers who are going through these persecutions all the time. So signs of the end. All right, we did that one. Okay, then there's this talk of the abomination of desolation. Can be really, really confusing. And this is something that kind of reoccurs throughout history because the temple, the Jewish temple, has been desecrated and profaned many times throughout history. And so The one that most closely Jesus is alluding to, again, is when in AD 70, General Titus, who later will become the emperor of Rome, there's a lot of yelling. Titus comes and he is the one who destroys Jerusalem and the temple. And that other blank there is that the abomination of desolation will be destroyed by the breath of Jesus. So there is a future. You know, it seems like the things that Jesus said when he talks about that the things will be so bad that nothing ever this bad has happened before, and nothing this bad will ever happen again. So it seems to point to a man of lawlessness who Paul talks about in 2 Thessalonians 2, 1 through 12, and we call this the Antichrist. Like, this guy is the one that Jesus will kill with the breath of his mouth. And so there's been desecrations and there's been abominations, but it looks like the Antichrist is going to be the climax. And right when that happens, you know, after this man of lawlessness comes to power, that's when Jesus says in verse 24 that we will all see, or everybody who's on the earth will see the coming of Jesus, the Son of Man. Now this is a statue, or not a statue really, but I guess a carving, and it's on your handout there, and I explained what it is on your second page there. But this is an archaeological discovery, and it actually has Titus returning to Rome in a triumphal procession, and he's taking with him things he took from the temple in Jerusalem before they destroyed it, like the golden lampstand and the table of showbread and one of the trumpets. And so this was put down in history, in Roman history. They were so proud of coming in and destroying the temple. So that's what that picture is all about. But the lawless one, the Antichrist, is coming, and Jesus' return will be evident and obvious to everybody. So when people are saying, hey, Jesus, he's out here in the forest, or Jesus, he's over here putting on a seminar. No, you'll know. Evident and obvious. We will all know when Jesus is coming back, all right? And then he does say that nobody knows the day or the hour of when Jesus will return. And it might be confusing to think, well, wait, if Jesus is God, how come Jesus wouldn't know? And what I think is Jesus is just, in this instance, showing an aspect of his humanity. Just as he has been hungry and thirsty and tired. This is Terry's opinion, all right? I think that Jesus, now resurrected, glorified at the right hand of the Father, probably does know now. Okay, but in his humanity at that moment, when he's saying, like, we're going to see him, you know, Father, remove this cup from me, but not as I will, as you will. He is in his humanity giving up some of his divine rights and privileges, okay? And maybe the Son still doesn't know. Maybe he doesn't, but I kind of think that he might now. But anyway, we certainly don't know, all right? We certainly don't know the day of his return, but he ends, and I want to read how he ends before we go to small group. He ends by saying, look at verse 32. So I'm chapter 13, 32. So Jesus says, but concerning that day or that hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Be on guard, keep awake, for you do not know when the time will come. It is like a man going on a journey when he leaves home and puts his servants in charge, each with his work, and commands the doorkeeper to stay awake. Therefore, stay awake, for you do not know when the master of the house will come, in the evening, or at midnight, or when the rooster crows, or in the morning, lest he come suddenly and find you asleep. And what I say to you, I say to all, stay awake. And so he's asking us all to stay awake, and that last word there is tasks. And I've got the Oompa Loompa sleeping there because he did not stay awake. And so I want to ask a question. I need some answers from you guys. Who wants to share of a time when you fell asleep in the middle of something? All right, there's a hand back here. All right, when did you fall asleep? In the middle of Bible class. All right, and what happened? Slammed what? Slammed his hand on the desk. All right. Startled you awake. Okay, so fell asleep in the middle of Bible class. I did that actually when I was at the Moody Bible Institute. I fell asleep in a class, and the teacher came over and kicked me. Like my leg was out. I was like totally out, and she kicked me. All right. So like in a class? So during reading class at school, fell asleep. And what happened? They just let you sleep. All right, just let you sleep. All right. Which movie was it? Yeah, pretty boring movie. Fell asleep. Okay. Yeah. Any dads fall asleep driving? Anybody? I get my best naps in, man, when I'm driving on a road trip. I am just like out and get some good sleep. I wake up and we're there. All right, one more.
Church.
Oh, so honest. Thank you for the honesty. I mean, not when I'm preaching though, right? Oh, maybe. All right, so falling asleep during a sermon at church, I used to do that because I would stay up way too late the night before, and my dad would later say that it must have been a really good sermon, and I would say, why do you say that? And he said, because you agreed with everything the pastor said. Because when you're falling asleep in church, you're doing this, right? So it looks like you're nodding in agreement. Okay, and so, yeah, man, there's lots of times where you might fall asleep. So in chapter 14 of Mark, and you can look ahead if you want to, the disciples are going to have a hard time staying awake. So Jesus is saying stay awake, and it's going to apply very quickly to the disciples. In what instance do the disciples fall asleep in chapter 14? Maybe you guys can guess or look ahead. All right. Jesus is like, you guys pray for me. I'm going to go pray. And he comes back like 3 times, and they're asleep every time. He's like, couldn't you keep awake? And what's crazy is he had just told them, like, on his big final discourse, like, stay awake, stay awake, stay awake. They go to pray, they fall asleep, they fall asleep. All right? And so when Jesus says to stay awake, and he's telling all of us as believers to stay awake. Now, again, in this story, when you read this story at the end here, when a man goes on a journey, who's the man who goes on a journey? Like if we had to say this is a real life person, who is the real life person who goes on a journey? Who said it? Somebody said. Yeah, it's Jesus. Right. So Jesus, he's talking about himself. I'm about to leave. I'm going to go on a journey. Okay. And I'm going to put the servants in charge. So who would the servants be? Yeah, the disciples. And now here all of us are. So he's going to put us in charge with our work. And he says, stay awake. And then the master is coming back. See, this all fits in what he had just said. He said, nobody knows the day, nobody knows the hour. And now he's doing the same thing. You guys don't know when I'm coming back. It could be in the evening or at midnight or when the rooster crows or in the morning. But when I come back, will I find you awake? What does that look like? And this is something you can talk about in your small groups. What does it look like for us as believers to stay awake? Any ideas? What does that look like? Like, what's an example in your own life? How are individual believers, how are churches, how are we supposed to stay awake? Any thoughts, any ideas? So to keep serving. All right, keep serving, yeah. Keep sharing the gospel. Sure, yep. Jonah, keep praying. Yeah, keep praying, absolutely. All right, study the Bible, know his word. Sure, yep. What do you think? Don't give up hope. Right, because we can look at the world and, man, it's terrible, the earthquakes and the wars. Don't give up hope. Sure, yep. Keep worshiping. Yeah. Don't get distracted. Yeah. So I like that. So what do you guys think are things that can distract us from Jesus, who's the coming king? What are distractions? I saw Jonah put his hand up like that, right? Phones, yeah. Unbelievers can distract us, yeah. Right back there. Say it a little louder. School. School can distract us, yeah. Family can distract us, yeah. Yeah, and a lot of these things are good things. Like family's good, school is good. And so we really have to say, like, Jesus, what do you mean keep awake? And I think part of it is like not getting so distracted that suddenly we, I think falling asleep, and I put it in your handout, is spiritual lethargy. So, when you're lethargic, we just are like, whatever, oh, I should do that thing. Yeah, I just got no energy. I got no time. I really don't want to, being lethargic. And I think we've got to remind ourselves that Jesus really is coming back. And so I have one last question for you. Here, let me start with a question like this. Have you ever said something like, if I had known blank, then I would have done this other thing? So here's a simple example. If I had known Shane and Emily were coming over, I would have made more coffee. If I'd known they were coming over, I would have made more coffee. Or if I had known that that Bitcoin, which started in 2009, and you could have gotten it for like $150. If I had known that Bitcoin today would be worth over $82,000, maybe I would have bought one or two, right? Or tried to get one. Or if I had known I would never see a certain person again, I would have, done something else. And so we have all of these if I had known, if I had known, if I had known, right? And maybe you guys can think of one. I was just thinking today of like my grandmother. If I had known that my last day with my grandmother, where she would have understood who I was and we could have had a conversation, I would have talked about this or asked her about this, But you don't know when that last day is. And so then you have these, oh man, if I had only known, if I had only known. So here's the thing. We do know that Jesus is coming back. If we believe he is true, like he's not lying to us, and we believe he really existed and rose from the grave and he really ascended to heaven. So if we really believe that Jesus is coming back, then that should give us great confidence to do and say absolutely amazing things. And I think that's what this couple who took this Muslim girl to church was thinking. You know what? Because Jesus is coming back, and he's coming back to judge the world, and this girl doesn't know who King Jesus really is, let's take her with us to church, okay? And so they did something amazing, and it ended up costing them their lives and this girl her life. I hope that she understood the gospel before her own mother poisoned her. We don't know. And so I think that you guys should have great boldness and great courage. And I don't know if you notice this, when we sing worship songs, we sing absolutely outrageous things. We sing things like my heart is totally yours. And I'm going to do everything my whole life belongs to you. Like we sing things that are way above what we actually live out. And it's like, man, we got to rewrite our worship songs. It should be like, Lord, I give you 25% of my heart. I give you 1/8 of my soul. I live for you a 16th of the time. Every breath that I take, every moment I'm awake, Lord, have your way in me. Like, that's just a song that came into my head. And it's like, whoa, we sound like we are 100% all the time in for Jesus. Our worship songs are way, way up there, And so that's not terrible, but maybe what we need to do is say like, Lord, bring me up to speed with these words I'm willing to sing, like make me really believe that you're coming back. And that I can actually take it like that seriously, and I can actually do bold and amazing things for you. Because we're the ones he left behind, that he's going to come back for, and he wants us to stay awake and stay faithful. And so I just want to encourage you guys, maybe it's time for you to like change something in your life where you're like, you know what, I do want to be serious about Jesus coming back. I do want to worship and love him as my king. We've got this gospel board over here with all of these names, and hopefully we're praying for them, but maybe now it's time to actually say, we've only got 4 or 6 youth groups left. We have April and a couple weeks in May, and maybe it's time to how do I level up? And maybe it's time to take a Gospel of Mark back there, and you march up to them and you just say, I don't know if you've ever considered Jesus. He said he's coming back. You really should read what he has to say. I'd love to talk to you more about it. And you could just leave him a gospel mark, and it can be as simple as that. And if we believe that Jesus is coming back, then we've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. And the last thing I thought of saying was just, because we know Jesus is coming back, we can take great risks in even sharing the gospel with somebody because it's for their own good. So last thing is, even today when I went to Dunn Brothers to get coffee, some of the Tuesday Bible study group, we went over there a couple months back, and we actually left a really big tip for two of the servers, two of the baristas. And one of them was there today when I got coffee. Her name is Allison. Yes, that was one of them, Allison. And so I asked Allison at the drive